Every trader remembers the painful phase, but almost no one talks about what comes after it. The frustration, the confusion, the moment where effort no longer seems to match results. Most traders believe this pain means they are failing. In reality, this pain exists because something inside them is breaking, not their skill, but their illusions. The illusion of control, the illusion of certainty, the illusion that the market owes them clarity if they work hard enough. What no one tells traders is this: the painful phase is not punishment, it is initiation. And on the other side of it is a way of thinking that very few ever reach, not because it's complex, but because it requires letting go of who you thought you needed to be to succeed. This is the part of the journey that separates dreamers from professionals. The painful phase feels personal because the trader still believes the market is responding to them. Every loss feels like rejection. Every win feels like relief. The mind is locked in a struggle to prove worth, intelligence, and control. This phase hurts because the trader is still trying to bend uncertainty into certainty. What no one explains is that the pain doesn't come from the market. It comes from resistance. Resistance to randomness. Resistance to probability. Resistance to accepting that outcomes are never a reflection of effort or intent. The market does not reward desire. It does not respond to confidence. It does not acknowledge fear. Once this truth begins to sink in, something unusual happens. The trader stops fighting the market and starts observing it. After the painful phase, the trader no longer asks, "Why did this happen to me?" They begin asking, "Did I execute my edge?" This shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Losses no longer carry emotional weight because they were already accepted the moment the trade was entered. Wins no longer create euphoria because they were never expected, only allowed. The trader stops trying to predict and starts allowing probabilities to unfold. This is the phase where discipline stops feeling forced. Before, discipline required effort because the trader was fighting internal fear. After pain, discipline becomes natural because there is nothing left to defend. No identity tied to outcomes, no emotional attachment to being right. Most traders never reach this phase because they mistake emotional numbness for indifference. In reality, it is emotional neutrality, a calm awareness where the trader understands that the next trade means nothing by itself, but everything over time. This is where consistency is born, not from motivation, not from confidence, but from acceptance. After the painful phase, the trader finally understands risk, not as a number, but as a psychological contract, a pre-agreed cost of participation. Once that cost is paid, the mind is free, free to follow rules, free to wait, free to exit without hesitation. At this stage, the market no longer feels dangerous. It feels honest. The trader realizes that the market has been offering the same opportunity all along, but the mind was too busy protecting itself to see it. And here's the truth. No one tells you. The painful phase doesn't end when you make money. It ends when you stop needing the market to make you feel okay. When that happens, performance takes care of itself. The painful phase is not the end. It is the psychological reset point. Most traders never hear this truth while they are inside it. They believe pain is evidence of failure, a signal that something is wrong with them, their strategy, or their intelligence. But pain in trading does not come from incompetence. It comes from conflict. It comes from the collision between how the mind is wired to seek certainty and how the market is designed to deliver uncertainty. In the beginning, every trader enters the market with hidden expectations. Even if they say they understand risk, even if they talk about probabilities, deep inside there is a belief that effort should lead to reward, that discipline should guarantee success, and that learning more should eventually remove uncertainty. The painful phase begins when reality starts dismantling these beliefs. Losses arrive that make no sense emotionally. Good setups fail. Bad trades sometimes win. The mind searches for logic, meaning, or mistakes. But the answers never fully satisfy. This is where frustration grows. The trader works harder, studies more, refines strategies, changes indicators, and adds rules. Yet the emotional discomfort remains. This is not because the trader lacks skill, but because the mind is still trying to control outcomes. Pain intensifies when the trader realizes that knowing what to do does not guarantee doing it. Rules are broken not because the trader is careless, but because fear and hope override logic in real time. This creates self-doubt. Why can't I just follow my plan? Becomes a recurring question. The trader starts questioning their discipline, their mindset, even their suitability for trading. What is actually happening is deeper than discipline. The mind is being forced to confront something it has avoided its entire life, the idea that uncertainty cannot be eliminated, only managed. The painful phase is the moment when the illusion of control begins to crack. At first, this feels destabilizing. The trader feels exposed, vulnerable, and emotionally exhausted. Confidence fades, motivation fluctuates. Some days the trader feels close to a breakthrough, other days they feel like quitting. This emotional swing is not random, it is the mind oscillating between old beliefs and new realities. The pain exists because the trader is still trying to protect their identity. Every loss feels like a personal verdict, every mistake feels like proof of inadequacy. The market becomes a mirror reflecting internal fears rather than external opportunities. The trader is not trading price anymore, they are trading their self-worth. The psychological reset point occurs when resistance becomes too painful to maintain. Eventually, the trader reaches a moment, sometimes quietly, sometimes dramatically, where they realize that fighting the market is exhausting and pointless. This is not surrender in a weak sense. It is surrender in an intelligent sense. At this point, a subtle shift begins. The trader stops asking, "How do I avoid losses?" and starts asking, "How do I define risk in a way that makes losses acceptable?" This is a profound change. Losses are no longer treated as errors to be eliminated, but as costs that must be paid. Acceptance begins here. Not intellectual acceptance, but emotional acceptance. The trader no longer needs the next trade to work to feel okay. They no longer need to be right to feel competent. This does not happen overnight. It unfolds gradually, through repeated exposure to uncertainty without emotional collapse. As this acceptance deepens, the mind starts to reset. Old patterns of fear lose their grip. Impulsive behavior decreases not because of willpower, but because there is less internal pressure. The trader is no longer trying to prove anything to the market. This is where true discipline emerges. Not discipline based on force, but discipline based on alignment. The trader follows rules because the rules make sense psychologically, not because they are afraid of breaking them. Waiting becomes easier. Exiting trades becomes cleaner. Hesitation fades because the outcome no longer defines the trader. The painful phase teaches the trader something no book can fully explain, that consistency is not created by predicting better, but by responding consistently to uncertainty. The trader begins to see the market as a flow of opportunities rather than a test of intelligence. At the reset point, the trader's relationship with risk changes fundamentally. Risk is no longer something to fear or avoid. It becomes something that is predefined, contained, and accepted before the trade is entered. This frees the mind during the trade. There is no bargaining with the market, no emotional negotiation, no desperate hope. The trader also stops overvaluing individual trades. Each trade becomes just one instance in a long series. Wins and losses lose their emotional charge. This neutrality is often misunderstood by beginners as indifference, but it is actually clarity. The trader cares deeply about execution, but not about individual outcomes. This reset does not make trading easy. It makes it honest. The trader now sees their mistakes clearly without judgment. They can analyze behavior objectively because their identity is no longer attached to performance. Feedback becomes useful instead of painful. Many traders quit just before this point. They mistake emotional exhaustion for proof that they are not cut out for trading. In reality, they are closer than they realize. The pain they feel is the sound of old beliefs collapsing. After the reset, confidence returns. But it is a different kind of confidence. It is not based on recent wins or market conditions. It is based on trust in process. The trader trusts that if they execute their edge over time, the probabilities will take care of the results. This trust is calm, not excited. The market no longer feels hostile. It feels neutral. The trader no longer tries to outsmart it or dominate it. They participate in it. This participation is grounded in realism rather than hope. The painful phase strips away fantasy. It removes the idea that trading should feel good all the time, that success should come quickly, or that certainty is achievable. What remains after this stripping process is something far more valuable: psychological stability. From this stability, growth becomes sustainable. The trader can refine strategies without emotional desperation. They can reduce risk without fear of missing out. They can increase size without ego. Decisions become cleaner because the noise has been removed. The painful phase is not a detour, it is the path. It is the process by which the trader's mind is reshaped to function in an environment governed by probabilities. Those who pass through it emerge with a mindset that no longer needs external validation. In the end, the market never changes. The charts look the same. The opportunities are no different. What changes is the trader. The pain did not break them, it rebuilt them. Painful phase is not the end of the journey. It is the moment the journey actually begins. After pain, the market stops being personal. This is one of the most misunderstood transitions in a trader's development, because while the external experience looks the same, charts, candles, wins, losses, the internal experience is completely different. Before this shift, every movement in price feels like a message. After it, price is just information. This change does not come from learning more about the market. It comes from surviving the emotional consequences of misunderstanding it. In the early stages, the trader unknowingly assigns meaning to every outcome. A losing trade feels like rejection. A winning trade feels like approval. The market becomes a judge, and the trader becomes someone seeking validation. This dynamic creates emotional volatility that mirrors price volatility. The trader is not simply reacting to the market. They are reacting to what they believe the market is saying about them. Pain begins when this belief system starts failing. The trader does everything right and still loses. They follow rules and get punished. They break rules and sometimes get rewarded. The mind cannot reconcile this inconsistency, so it looks inward and assumes fault. This is where the market feels cruel, unfair, and personal. The trader believes they are being singled out. This perception intensifies emotional reactions. Losses feel heavier than they should. Missed opportunity. IS create regret. Winning trades create relief rather than confidence. The trader is constantly managing emotions instead of executing a plan. The market feels like an opponent rather than an environment. The painful phase exposes the flaw in this thinking. Over time, the trader begins to see patterns, not just in price, but in their emotional responses. They notice that the same feelings arise regardless of market conditions. Fear appears even in low-risk trades. Euphoria appears even after rule-breaking wins. Slowly, a realization forms. The emotional experience is coming from within, not from the market. This realization is uncomfortable at first. It removes the option of blame. If the market is not doing anything to the trader, then the trader must confront their own expectations. This is where growth begins, even though it feels like loss. The loss of the belief that outcomes are personal. After enough exposure to uncertainty, something shifts. The trader stops interpreting price movement as commentary. A loss is no longer the market taking money from me. It becomes this outcome fell within the range of probabilities. This language change reflects a deeper mental shift. The trader is no longer inside the trade emotionally. When the market stops being personal, emotional intensity drops dramatically. This does not mean the trader stops caring. It means they stop attaching identity to results. They care about execution, not validation. They measure success by how well they followed their process, not by whether the trade worked. This shift creates space between stimulus and response. Before, a sudden price movement triggered immediate emotional reactions. Now it triggers assessment. The trader observes instead of reacts. This observation is calm, not forced. It is the natural result of acceptance. One of the clearest signs of this transition is how the trader handles losses. Before, losses linger emotionally. They replay in the mind, creating hesitation in future trades. After pain, losses are processed quickly. They are recorded, reviewed, and released. There is no emotional residue. The same applies to wins. Winning trades no longer inflate ego or create overconfidence. They are simply confirmation that the edge worked this time. This neutrality allows the trader to maintain consistency regardless of recent outcomes. Emotional balance becomes stable rather than fragile. When the market stops being personal, the trader also stops seeking certainty. They no longer need confirmation before entering trades. They no longer hesitate waiting for the perfect setup. They understand that perfection does not exist in probabilistic environments. This understanding reduces anxiety and indecision. Another important change is how the trader experiences time. Before, waiting feels uncomfortable. The trader feels compelled to act, fearing missed opportunities. After pain, waiting feels normal. The trader understands that doing nothing is part of the process. Patience is no longer a struggle, it is a state. This mental shift also improves risk management. Because outcomes are no longer personal, the trader can accept stops without emotional resistance. They no longer move stops to avoid being wrong. They no longer hold losers hoping for redemption. Exits become clean and decisive. The market also becomes quieter. Not in terms of volatility, but in terms of mental noise. The trader is no longer overwhelmed by conflicting signals. They see what matters and ignore what does not. This clarity is not intellectual, it is emotional. Many traders believe this level of detachment means losing passion. In reality, it deepens commitment. The trader is now engaged with the process rather than emotionally entangled with outcomes. This creates longevity. Burnout decreases. Focus improves. After pain, the trader stops fighting themselves. There is no internal argument between fear and logic. Decisions feel aligned. This alignment is what allows consistency to emerge. Not perfect consistency, but behavioral consistency, the only kind that matters. The market, once perceived as host, aisle now feels neutral. It is no longer something to conquer or outsmart. It is something to participate in with respect. The trader no longer expects fairness or rewards. They expect randomness within structure. This change also alters how the trader learns. Feedback is no longer threatening. Mistakes are no longer shameful. They become data points. This accelerates growth because learning is no longer blocked by defensiveness. Perhaps the most profound outcome of this shift is freedom. The trader is free from emotional dependency on the market, free from the need to prove themselves, free from the cycle of hope and fear. This freedom does not guarantee profits, but it makes consistent performance possible. After pain, the market stops being personal because the trader finally understands the truth. The market has no memory, no intention, and no opinion. It is not reacting to the trader, and it never was. What changes is not the market, but the mind that engages with it. Consistency emerges only after the need to be right dies. This truth is uncomfortable because the need to be right feels natural, justified, even necessary. From the very beginning, traders are taught, directly or indirectly, that success comes from correct analysis, accurate predictions, and superior knowledge. The mind equates being right with being safe, competent, and worthy. As long as this equation exists, consistency remains out of reach. In the early stages, every trade carries an unspoken quest. Ion, am I right or wrong? This question creates emotional pressure before the trade even begins. The trader is no longer engaging with probabilities. They are seeking confirmation of their beliefs. When the trade moves in their favor, relief floods in. When it moves against them, discomfort appears immediately. The outcome feels personal because correctness is tied to identity. This attachment creates subtle but powerful distortions. The trader hesitates on valid entries because being wrong would hurt. They move stops because admitting a loss feels like admitting failure. They hold losers too long, hoping the market will eventually prove them right. They exit winners too early, fearing the pain of giving back profits and being wrong again. These behaviors are not technical errors, they are psychological defenses. As long as the need to be right exists, the trader cannot fully accept risk. They may define risk numerically, but emotionally they are still negotiating with outcomes. Each trade carries hope for validation. Each loss feels like a threat. This internal conflict creates inconsistency, regardless of how good the strategy is. The painful phase begins when this conflict becomes obvious. The trader sees the same mistakes repeating. They understand what they should do, yet they don't do it consistently. Frustration builds because effort does not resolve the problem. More knowledge does not help. Better tools do not help. The issue is not external, it is internal. Eventually, the trader begins to notice a pattern. The most painful losses are not financial, they are psychological. They hurt because they challenge the trader's self-image. The mind resists being wrong because being wrong feels unsafe. This resistance is deeply conditioned, not just from trading but from life. Being right has always been associated with approval, success, and control. Trading exposes this conditioning mercilessly. The market does not care about effort, intelligence, or intention. It produces outcomes that are random in the short term and probabilistic over time. In this environment, the need to be right becomes a liability. The turning point comes when the trader realizes that being right is irrelevant. This realization is not intellectual at first. It is experiential. After enough losses that follow the plan and enough wins that come from mistakes, the trader begins to see that correctness does not correlate with consistency. Execution does. This realization is destabilizing. If being right does not matter, then what does? At first, the mind resists this idea. It feels like giving up control. It feels like lowering standards. But gradually, the trader sees the truth. Consistency does not require being right often. It requires behaving consistently. When the need to be right starts to fade, the trader's relationship with trades changes. A trade is no longer a statement about intelligence or skill. It becomes a simple expression of an edge. The trader is no longer emotionally invested in the outcome. They are invested in the process. This shift reduces internal pressure dramatically. There is no longer a need for the trade to work. The trader accepts the possibility of loss fully before entering. Because of this acceptance, there is no surprise when a loss occurs, no emotional spike, no urge to interfere. As the need to be right dies, discipline stops feeling like self-control. The trader does not have to force themselves to follow rules. They follow rules because breaking them no longer offers emotional relief. There is nothing to prove and nothing to protect. One of the clearest changes appears in how the trader handles exits. Stops are honored without hesitation. Targets are respected without greed. The trader no longer second-guesses decisions mid-trade because there is no emotional agenda. The plan is executed cleanly, and the outcome is allowed to be whatever it will be. Consistency begins to show up not as perfection, but as stability. The trader's behavior becomes predictable. Losses remain contained. Wins are allowed to unfold. Equity curves smooth out, not because losses disappear, but because emotional sabotage does. Another critical change is how the trader experiences uncertainty. Before, uncertainty was threatening because it increased the chance of being wrong. After the need to be right dies, uncertainty becomes neutral. It is simply the environment in which probabilities operate. The trader no longer needs certainty to act. This freedom allows patience to emerge naturally. The trader can wait for valid setups without anxiety. They can skip marginal trades without fear of missing out. They trust that opportunities are abundant over time, not urgent in the moment. The trader also becomes more objective. Feedback is no longer filtered through ego. Mistakes can be examined honestly because they do not threaten identity. This accelerates learning and refinement. Growth becomes steady rather than emotional. Importantly, this shift does not make the trader careless or detached. On the contrary, it increases responsibility. When the trader is no longer focused on being right, they can focus fully on execution quality. Accountability becomes clear and unemotional. Many traders misunderstand this stage. They believe confidence comes from winning. In reality, confidence comes from self-trust, the trust that they will execute correctly regardless of outcome. This trust cannot exist while the need to be right dominates behavior. When the need to be right dies, the trader stops arguing with the market. There is no internal debate about fairness, timing, or missed opportunities. The market is accepted as it is. The trader adapts rather than resists. This acceptance is the foundation of consistency, not motivation, not discipline in the traditional sense, but alignment between beliefs and reality. The trader believes in probabilities and behaves accordingly. Over time, this alignment compounds. The trader experiences fewer emotional swings, decision-making becomes clearer, performance stabilizes. The results reflect the edge more accurately because interference has been removed. In the end, consistency is not a skill to be learned. It is a byproduct of psychological clarity. It emerges naturally when the trader no longer needs the market to confirm their worth. The need to be right dies quietly. There is no dramatic moment, just a gradual release of tension. And in that release, consistency finally has room to exist. Consistency is not achieved by effort or intelligence, but by inner resolution. When pain has done its work, the trader no longer seeks validation from outcomes. The market becomes neutral, losses become acceptable, and execution becomes the only focus. This is where stability is born. Not because the trader finally mastered the market, but because they mastered their relationship with uncertainty. What remains is calm participation, clear decisions, and behavior that no longer changes with emotion. This is the quiet foundation on which lasting performance is built.